How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to the Blue Shifting and welcome back to Higurashi When They Cry, Chapter 3. Okay, so Keiichi's setting his trap. He's got his plan. We're moving forward. And I can see this going two ways as far as, like, a recording session goes. Either we're going to just no-life it straight through. Implications being, it's probably going to be a couple hours, at least. That's if I'm not dilly-dallying. Or we chop it in half in a moment that might not be the most convenient, but like is the best I can manage. And we're gonna just end up seeing how it goes. I don't really know. I think it's gonna be something I have to play by ear. Don't hate me if I have to stop partway through, but at the same time, this is like as you've seen on the channel, when like things go wrong, I can easily just lose track of stuff and just can't be as consistent as I want to be. And that's kind of what happened last weekend. This weekend should be fine. Crossing fingers, but like at the same time, it means I have this pressure feeling like I need to make sure I come up with content. So I don't want to get so lost in the sauce that I end up accidentally sacrificing the time I need for other stuff. So let's just jump right in. Let's push ourselves to see how it goes. And if we have to split it up, we'll just deal with it. But yeah, no, it's we're trying to move forward and we're gonna see, because like I guess if there's some summaries about what it is, his basic plan is to use Watanagashi to try and make sure that Satoko's away, that the town is distracted, and then he's going to attempt to ambush her uncle by like along a path, like along the road. There's a lot of fail points I see in this. It could have worked maybe. For the sense of a story, it'd be satisfying if it did, but I feel like there's just so many ways that it can just go slightly awry and completely fall apart. And when there's so many fail points, I feel like it's not going to just happen. I mean, if we actually get, like, it could be a good manifestation of the curse if it's being real. If it's real, things are gonna work out, and then uncommonly, like it'll just kind of all fall into place. That could make me, if it feels like it almost works too conveniently, I might be willing to believe that the curse might just be the answer. I think it's going to fail. I think it might not fail like unsuccessfully. Like I could see it failing successfully, but I just don't think it's going to work out the way he thinks it will. So, well, I guess that's probably a given. That's usually how these things play out, right? In both fiction and real life, unfortunately. All right, now let's go. All right, let's see how this plans. Let's see how this goes. Sunday. The fireworks I heard before noon were probably to announce the opening of the festival. And the weather? Certainly wasn't festival weather. It was cloudy. The television forecast was calling for possible downpours starting this evening and lasting until around midnight. But as long as it wasn't raining at the moment, the festival would go on. The festival had to open, or it wouldn't begin. The Furude Shrine grounds were probably decorated beautifully for the big performance that only happened once a year. Many paper lanterns were hung up, all auspicious colors of red and white. The sound of electric motors in the stalls. The voices of kids running around. Their happy families watching them, smiling. Today was the festival of Watanagashi. Was everyone already partaking in the festivities? What about Satoko? Had she forgotten her days of suffering for just a few moments while smiling that brilliant smile she hadn't in so long? This would probably be the longest day of my life. It would be the day I would remember vividly for as long as I lived. I told my parents I'd go to the festival this evening and lounged about during the early afternoon. We may have lived under the same roof, but they couldn't help being surprised by the deviation from how I usually spent my time. Glancing at my parents out the corner of my eye, I went to the front door. I tied my shoes just a little tighter than normal, as if to express the firmness of my resolve in those knots. When I decided to murder Satoko's uncle, I was in such a state of excitement I almost went crazy. And when I was planning out the act of murder, which went directly against all the morals fostered in me thus far, I was in such a state of calm I almost thought I'd lost my emotions. And then yesterday, when I learned Satoshi had made exactly the same phone call as me, I didn't know how to describe the muddled feelings I had then. And now, entering today, right now I lacked all the emotions I'd possessed until now. To make a simple analogy, it was the kind of feeling you might get right after you wake up, when you're still half asleep and you don't feel anything very clearly. I had no anger towards the man for the violence he committed against Satoko, nor did I feel sadness toward this or sympathize with her. I felt no discontent towards my friends who had just waited and watched, never reaching out to her with any help, and no nervousness or fear towards the day that had finally come. Yes, right now you could say I was in the best possible condition for carrying out a murder. When it came down to it, I would probably need to let my violent emotions take control. But right up until that moment, I would be like an insect. I would slowly, surely, and silently move towards my one objective, and then, when I had my prey, I'd attack like a bullet. There's no emotion in that. But I don't believe you. That's the thing. I don't believe that he's actually emotionless. I think he's trying to convince himself he is. But I imagine that right underneath the surface, all those emotions are there. They're just probably fighting for attention. So it doesn't feel like he's feeling any one. It's just probably a royal within him. Just the creeping mindset insects possessed. That sort of sneaking feeling was just the best. I would kill Satoko's uncle like he was a worm. I had to laugh a little at thinking it like that, thinking like an insect. Tug. I tightened my laces one more time, walked out the door. I brought the shovel out from the storeroom. I would need it to dig the man's grave. The shovel was a convenient one made for camping. If I twisted it like so and split it into three, I could easily hide in my bag. I twisted the shovel and dismantled it. And even though I'd done it countless times before, I had trouble for some reason. Like I was suddenly clumsy now. I knew why. It wasn't because I was nervous. My weak-willed self deep within me was hesitant. I knew the act of dismantling the shovel was the first step I'd take to becoming a murderer. The last twist was conspicuously difficult, but I managed to submit before the strength of my determination. The area around Satoko's house was outside my circle of activity, but even just riding my bike in the middle of the day like this might seem suspicious to any observing person. I definitely wanted to avoid meeting and talking to someone I knew. With that in mind, I chose the route to my destination carefully. I didn't mind going the long way around. With how long this day would be, I could never be too careful after all. Still, I was fortunate enough not to run across anyone on my way to the planned site of the crime. I wasn't superstitious at this point, but it was a good omen. Wait, they say I wasn't superstitious at this point. That almost implies that he will be eventually. Was that intentional, or is that a kind of a goofy mistranslation, maybe biased by the person who's translating the story? The place I went to dig the hole was in the grove, a little further in the woods. I was worried I might not make it to the same place as before, since there were no signs to guide me, but I arrived there smoothly as expected. I took another look around. Not even a hint of human presence. The air was still a little bit damp, but it was comfortable in the cool shades of the tree. Alright, so right away, I'm thinking that there are some problems with this plan. Number one, Keiichi is still a young man. I doubt he's dug a hole deep enough. If you don't dig a hole deep enough, it's very likely to become exposed as weathering occurs. Like, yeah, maybe it won't be immediately, but within a few days. And then if like there's a corpse in the ground, it'll start rotting, and that'll draw attention even from people who aren't nearby. That can easily get this thing discovered. So that's part of why when we dig graves for like graveyards, we're supposed to dig them 6 feet deep, is because that prevents that from happening. That by the time erosion would take place, typically, there would be nothing left to create a stench. And so that's why we do 6 feet deep typically. It's not just like a random number. The other thing is that if they're going to be doing a search for a missing person, they usually have what are called cadaver dogs, which are dogs that are just basically primed to smell like a corpse. And even 6 feet deep, like burials, can be found by sniffer dogs. So if they actually investigate him, I don't think even like anything that Keiichi buries him in will be like perfect camouflage for that. I've heard the wives' tale story about how if you were to do this, you would dig a deep hole, like a really as deep as you could, and you put the body in, and then you bury it about halfway, and then you put an animal carcass in and bury that the rest of the way, because then the idea would be that if your cadaver dog like signals on the spot and they dig and then they find a rotting animal carcass, they just assume that that's what the dog wanted and move on. But I'm not sure that's actually the case, because dogs have such unique senses of smell. They can probably be tuned to smell like human remains as opposed to other kinds of remains. So I doubt that in reality that would work, but the concept is kind of fascinating to think about. The other problem I'm having here with this whole plan is that I don't see him strong enough to dig a deep enough hole, and I think that the biggest issue here is he hasn't taken care of other signs. Like if her uncle shows up on a motorcycle, like was implied, like he said bike, so it could be a bicycle, but it could also be like a motorbike. But if it is a bicycle, which maybe like the paths I was just seeing would be implying that more, he still needs to know how to dispose of that, because that just turns up randomly. People are going to start asking questions. It'd be best if the bike itself also vanished completely, but where would you take it? The best place I could think of would be the dumping ground, but even then, there's a good chance that could get discovered. I don't know. My gut's telling me that this is not going to work. That there's so many ways this could go wrong based on his plan. I just can't fathom it actually all playing out perfectly. I took the disassembled shovel out of my bag and began skillfully putting it together. Then, I stuck the tip of the shovel into the soft-looking patch of ground and pushed it on it with my foot. The shovel was split into the earth if I put some strength into that foot. The act of doing so seemed awfully like a point of no return and made me hesitate. I was just digging a hole with the shovel, but it made me gulp hard. Calm down, Keiichi Maribara. Let's do a countdown. Get it done on the count of 3, okay? Alright. 1, 2... I couldn't do it on the countdown, despite it just being sticking my shovel into the ground, and I had to count down 5 or 6 times. Dang it, I'm just digging a hole. This is pathetic. And that's the other problem too, like, nerve. He had a lot of conviction, true, but is he actually going to be able to do this? As I thought, I put strength into my heel, like I was stepping on something unpleasant, and split came a sharp noise. It was only soft at the beginning. The roots and stones quickly got in my way, informing me just how hard it was to dig a hole big enough for a person. No decent person would ever come here anyway. Maybe it would be enough to cover him with some dirt. No, it wouldn't be. Every time a naive thought like that crept into my mind, I bit down on it with my teeth and dug even harder. I've dug enough now. I could hide him like this. Every time I thought that, I would go down the hole, growing disappointed at how shallow it was, and return to digging. That's another thing. If you're gonna do this, like, it sucks because you could end up leaving like some interesting like evidence, but you really should be digging for a few days, because he's expecting to now be able to be strong enough after digging all day, like at very aggressive physical labor, especially if you're not used to doing it. And then he's gonna expect to have the strength to fight an adult and win. Yeah, he'll have a weapon, but if he's exhausted, do you think that weapon's gonna be as effective? No. No. This needed far more planning. The thin layer of sweat on my brow eventually formed into drops and fell to the ground. My back was even in worse shape. My damp shirt adhered to my skin, and it felt so disgusting. The things I couldn't stand the most were the mosquitoes. Maybe they were attracted by the scent of my sweat. The white and black striped mosquitoes would cling to me whenever I let my guard down. It was hot. It was disgusting. I was sticky. I was itchy. All those uncomfortable feelings surged through me in waves. I hadn't yelled at anyone. It was me talking to myself, telling myself something. Why was I feeling this way and digging a hole all the way out here? What benefit would digging a hole give me? What harm would there be in not digging the hole at all? Wait, in the first place, who ordered me to dig? When I thought it over, maybe ever since grade school, even before that, my whole life had been me doing what other people told me to do. I didn't mean I was somehow constrained, living a life just based on the commands of others. I think that's just being a child. Like, you have, I don't know if it's psychological or whatnot, but like if you have like a somewhat decent home, I think you just innately have the innocence of where you just trust the people who care for you. You trust your parents, you trust your grandparents, you trust like so many people. That's actually why crimes against children are so terrible, because you take that trust and you obliterate it and you manipulate it for your own ends. But that's just how life is. But yeah, like this is one of the most important stages of awakening, and unfortunately, that a lot of people interpret it as like being a rebellious teenager. But all it is it's the understanding of like, wait, I have free will. I can do what I want. I don't have to do what other people tell me. Again, comes up as angstiness because the teenager will often try to use that ability to make choices, and the easiest choices to make that are clearly like, oh, I'm doing this because I want to, are to just do what your parents or authority figures tell you not to do. Like, it's a really easy step to make to kind of try and assert your own, like, will. But like, it's an important stage of growth of just understanding that, like, you know what? I've been doing everything that's been expected of me and been told that I should do. I want to try doing something just because I want to or don't want to. And it didn't mean I was too lazy to find out on my own road of life. Metaphorically speaking, yes, it was like a road. I'd never been particularly physically fit. I didn't hit puberty very early, and if all my classmates and I got in a line, I'd usually be on the shorter end. My scores in jump rope competitions and marathons were the very picture of average. And I wasn't like the captains of dodgeball team would have a passionate rock, paper, scissors contest to see which would get me. During those kindergarten and grade school years, I felt like someone was only worth how fast they grew or how fit they were. Looking back at it now, it was really uncomfortable for me. Yeah, me too, bro. Me too. The thing that turned all that around was just a few words from my mother.
Keiichi, あなた塾に入る気はない？学校の勉強がわかるようになって楽しくなるわよ。
The very first test I took at cram school was kind of like a game. It was a lot of fun. It wasn't like the test of the same exact problems dozens of times in a row. Every question had a picture on it, almost like one of those puzzle books that came with the manga magazines. If my studies at school had been like this, it would have been way more fun. Several days later, went to the cram school again and with my mother to enroll in enrollment paperwork. Mom and the person at the cram school had a really long, heated discussion, so I accidentally dozed off and missed most of what they said, but I clearly remember one point. Mom had made a loud groan, surprised at something.
61って平均点が61点ですか？
Oh.
いえ、違いますよ、お母さん。全国展開する当塾での平均偏差値が61です。
The deviation from the mean of all our cram schools.
簡易式の知能検査でも非凡な数字が出ています。
Oh. So, he scored like, Okay.
まず申し上げて、前原圭一君は大変に頭がいい。
That's cool.
圭一が？
She's like, my son? What?
でも学校では大した成績じゃありませんし、通信簿も2、3、4が適当に並ぶ平均的なもので、何かの間違いではありませんか？
いくつかの知能テストとも重ねましたが、その結果、興味深いことが分かりました。
How much you want to bet he's like me, he's a visual learner. Like having pictures and like physical representations of concepts was just so much easier for the graphs than just raw numbers. It's funny because like I understand and get raw numbers pretty well. Like I never struggled in math, but when math stopped being about just hypotheticals, like, oh, this is an algebraic formula, apply it to these numbers to get a result. I was like, okay, whatever. But then I started taking geometry and trigonometry where it's like, these are shapes. These are things that are in the real world, and you can discover secrets about them by applying formula. Then it became fun, and my grades skyrocketed, and it became so much better. It just clicked for me. It made so much sense, which is also, what's also kind of funny about things like economics. Economics was something that came to me like a fish to water, and I think it's because there was like a tangible, like real world example of like its function. And that just made all the difference for me. Instead of it being like, oh, this is just a number that helps you understand numbers better. Like, that's cool. I get that. But when it's something it's like you can sink your teeth into, it just really sings to me. And so economics just like always has made sense to me. Like almost on an instinctual level. Now, does that mean I'm like some kind of brilliant person? Like, no. In fact, it makes me cautious. Like, I look at stock markets and you think people who are brilliant because they can do like, you know, like day trading and stuff. No, they're just gambling. It's just another form of gambling. It's all about trying to read like trends and trying to predict how people are going to think. But here's the thing. 90% of that stuff, I guarantee you now, is just algorithms and AI. And it's only going to get worse from here. We are like, people talk about like the dead internet theory that a majority of the internet might be just bots. That may be the case at some point, but I think there's always going to be a core element of humanity in the internet. It's just some of like the core reactions might not be. For instance, like channels are probably channels that grow and become big and successful. I wonder if it's impossible unless you are like using like botting and AI to like swell your numbers fast enough that the algorithm picks you up and then you can be truly successful. I'm genuinely starting to wonder if that's like the only way. It's very clear that that's what people do, and it works. Even if they get punished for it later, it still works. So anyway, regardless of that, trading, that stuff, like, big part of it is speed, being able to do it fast. What's faster than a computer and an algorithm, especially when you can set it up to do things like when things like are growing at a certain rate, like hold for this much time and then sell. And then when things start to go down, when they like look for a plateau, and when it plateaus by a certain like parameter that you set, then you buy, so you can buy low, sell high, that stuff. Guarantee you that's how it all works. Which means that the market's be very reactive. If you could like dump a bunch of stock very suddenly, like you could make all the automatic systems just immediately take grab and just plunge it even further. Like, I think the next major crash of the economy, if it hasn't already happened yet, it's going to be because of that automated like systems all clicking at the same time and just bottoming the market by default in like a few minutes. And we won't have time to respond to that. But regardless of that, why do I not get involved in that stuff? Because it scares the crap out of me. Because as soon as like I started looking into it all, like the whole system is basically built of balsa wood and hope. And it's like the only reason it works is because we believe it works. It's basically faith. It's like, oh, that's scary. Because the economy used to be tied directly to physical, tangible objects. But even our currency, the US dollar, is backed by just like wishes and like past like legacy trust. It's not backed by anything like a standard. It's backed just on like because we said it is. And it's like there's no way that's gonna last. So yeah, the economy scares me. But when it came to studying it, understanding it, and like being able to like talk about it in class and on all of that, like I just got it. It made sense. Anyway, I think he's like me in that regard. Like it's the more physical, tangible, and like the more you can sink your teeth into the ideas as it is in like the real world, the more sense it makes.
前原君は意味を持たない問題に非常に弱いのです。
Oh, it's almost like I knew.
無味乾燥で自身の生活に結びつかない内容の問題に興味が持てないのです。
2+3 は分からなくても、リンゴが2個あって3個増やしたら何個にという形なら理解できるということですか?
The very basic breakdown, but yes, absolutely. The difference being like arbitrary 2 to 3 and then having objects, because that's the thing, like part of the reason why I think I am good at math is because I assign meaning to the numbers when I'm given a formula as best I can. That helps me do it better.
その通りです。例えば、正六面体の展開図を書けと言われて混乱する圭一君も、サイコロを切り開いたらどんな形になるというふうに聞けば、見事に答えられるのです。
Then the person in the cram school showed her a page from one of the exams I took. It was a paper with questions about construction. Construction questions were unusual, so they were really cool, weren't they?
正二十面体の展開図を書けという問題です。
Icosahedron. Icosahedron. A shape with 20 faces of... Oh, I thought that was a dodecahedron. But yeah, that's a D20. And he was able to do that just on the fly? That's impressive for like a kid.
この問題を二十面体のサイコロを作るにはどんな風に厚紙を切ればいいと聞き直したら、圭一君はさも簡単そうにこれを書いてみせました。これは平凡なことではありません。
Nice.
ケイチ、あなたどこかの本の雑誌の付録か何かで二十面体のサイコロを作ったことがあったの?
The dice were only went from 1 to 6. I'd never even considered before this test that there were dice that were more than 6 sides. That's true. I'll tell you, it's basically like D&D is the way you learn that there's more dice than the 6-sided ones usually. So it was fun to imagine what kind of shape a die that went up to 20 would have. If I had a die like that, I could win snakes and ladders against anyone. So I immediately wanted to make it. Finally, I entered the cram school. There were only 4 students in the class they put me in, which was called Select. It was the highest class, and some of my classmates were in the lower classes. And when I remembered how much better they had done at things like dodgeball and the 50-meter sprint, I felt happiness well up within me for the first time. Oh my gosh, he's a nerd. Even when I wasn't as good as them physically, I triumphed over them in other ways. It was fun at first. The more I did, the more I was praised. The teachers at my school suddenly started pampering me, and it felt good. My parents were satisfied too, and I enjoyed seeing them satisfied. The more I listened to my parents' commands, the more fun things got. Then that did happen, didn't it? I grinned dryly in self-depreciation. Because, well, my studious lifestyle didn't end up lasting very long. It was only at the beginning I enjoyed learning more and more. I gradually got along less with my friends. My classes were behind where I was learning in cram school, and I eventually stopped respecting the teachers, given that they could put me to sleep with their lectures. And, well, I was a disagreeable sort who bragged a lot about how much I knew, and the ways the world wouldn't let me remain in that state of ecstasy forever. I would do as I was told, then I would go above and beyond their expectations, and then they would praise me. I was happy for that, and the cycle repeated itself like the wheels on a bike. I thought moving forward like that was how life worked, like a bicycle. When I moved into Hinamizawa, I realized just how inadequate it was. Some things happened, and we started saying how moving and getting a change in atmosphere would be nice. And then my father, he had a place that he liked, that he'd gone to a few times to draw the nature. He started saying that he wanted to bring his atelier there. With me in blank amazement, they decided to move to Hinamizawa. After that, I met them, didn't I? The first day after transferring here, I went to the classroom with the teacher. I thought it would seem pitiful for her to bring me in there, so I placed my hand on the door before she could and slammed it open and stepped foot into the room. Shit clatter. The thrilling, powerful way I opened that door was none other than my own determination to try doing my life over again, and it's Satoko's prank that's gonna get him. And then within a second, the determined look I had took a hard counter to the face. The blackboard eraser fell on me. Plus, there were huge rocks inside. It was a supremely painful trap someone had set up. Oh, come on, Satoko's already beating me right from the first day I transferred? That frightened me. I was bewildered. The class was surprised too. I wasn't just surprised that the students in the class were all in different grades and were all different genders. It was because the room felt completely different from the schools I knew. And as I spread more time with them, my surprise continued to grow. A fresh sense of surprise had never left my life, even to this day. Every day was a fresh new surprise. I'd never had a single boring day since coming here. The days were lively, spent with some of the other club members. We played old maid with cards and with scratches on the back to cheat. We all let the passions go wild during our games. We went all out as regular participants in tournaments as the toy store in town and many, many more things. Recently, during those times, there were a bento competition. It was then. That's when I saw an unexpected side to Satoko. Thinking back on it, I only ate dinner with her 2 nights. It was such sweet, gentle time spent and warming my heart remembering even now. I realized that Satoko was pretending to be stubborn and firm, and how brave she was, part of her heart always waiting for her Nini to come home. And I vowed to become her Nini. Satoko may have been nagging and overly critical, but she knew how to take care of someone. But though it might have seemed like she was taking the lead, it was actually her way of depending on another person. Even if Satoshi and Satoko's lives as siblings were confined by their uncle and his wife, they were still warm, sunny days. When did those sunny days all go wrong? What mistake was made? Lamenting tragedies of the past would do no good. I told myself this so many times, but I did anyway. Keiichi, isn't that why you're choosing your own path? To take back that life? Nobody ordered you to do this. You decided it on your own. You didn't desire anyone's praise for this. You thought it all through yourself. You'd carve it out yourself. And you'll do it again now. And you'll do it now. Like, is it just, like, if Oyashiro-sama's curse is real, this is just the curse whispering to him that he's totally on his own. Like, it's such a creepy lie to be like, oh, you totally thought about this yourself, said the person who's been telling me how to do this. This wasn't a path I could see very far down. Not the road parents or society could offer. It was a narrow path, dark and utterly distressing, one for which the next step would always be shrouded in darkness. But that disheartening path would keep on going forever. It was an unlimited path. There was nowhere I couldn't travel. The kind of path only available to those who are able to imagine where they wanted to go. Don't be ashamed of breaking from the brightly lit paved road. In fact, feel proud that you found your very own path to walk. And I haven't discarded the paved road either. Once I achieved my goal, I would go right back to the brightened road, and then I'd spend those average sunny days at my leisure. Crush. When I next realized it, the hole had grown so deep I couldn't believe it. Did I dig all this myself?
これだけ掘れば十分じゃないか。
He really is like, I feel like he is getting a helping hand. I pulled my shovel into the bottom of the hole. I would drag the body here, throw it in the hole, and cover it up with dirt. Even if it took me time to camouflage it by putting plants on top, it would all go so much easier than digging this hole had. I glanced at my watch. It was almost evening, and I hadn't realized it. I may not have felt the time passing, but digging a hole this deep must have taken quite a long time. I took a seat on the slanted rock nearby and wiped the sweat from my brow. Now, once it all got a little darker, I'd go get the metal bat I hid in the schoolyard. Then I'd make the call to lure him out. Then, I'd do it. The number of things I needed to do to reach that moment were dwindling. I felt the moment closing in on me much more keenly than I did the passage of time. I didn't have any hesitation, but I still felt that contradiction. At every step in this process, I had a few chances to hesitate, to turn back, to let myself lose my nerve. Having to endure those million temptations and wait for when the time was right was an incredibly slow and painful torture. I had thought myself acting all weak because of that, but I stopped midway through. This was okay. I was fine. I could detest the abnormal act of homicide as much as I wanted, and it didn't matter. I wasn't going to be a cutthroat killer after today. I would pass through the strange day, go back to the world I was in before. If I fell to the level of a psychopath who thought of nothing but killing, I wouldn't be able to go back to my old life. I like how that implies that he could. He's like, I might go be a psychopath, but I wouldn't want to give up my real life. So this was fine with me. I didn't have to feel ashamed that hesitating to kill, because I was human. It was so funny to me that I had been the bearer of Oyashiro-sama's curse at the same time I was aware I was human. I exhaled lightly and stood. I concealed my presence and sharpened my senses in all directions to search for anyone around me but me. Okay, let's go. One step at a time. I would walk my own path. A path no one had forced me to walk.
行くぞ。前原圭一。
The cicadas made an annoying fuss. The chorus covered up the suspicious noise of me breaking twigs underfoot, and their chorus filled the path ahead of me, letting me know I would be alone for some time. The cicadas blessed the path I walked, encouraging me with every last ounce of strength they had. Which is interesting, because the cicadas have been described before as being this kind of menacing, this like quiet, silent observers, these watchers in the trees, or harassers. But now they're like, here, we're helping you. It's an interesting tone twist. The sky was far above. In not even an hour, the veil of night would draw near, so the sky would be tinted with dusk. By that time, the Higurashi would let me hear their chorus in place of the cicadas. When that happened, would everything be over with? Would everything have ended? I said something along those lines when I let Satoko's fate up to the public agency. But this time was different. I would do it. I would carry it out. I would end it. It would all be over very soon. Everything would end. Yes, when the Higurashi cried. Oh, that's an interesting name drop there. That's the first time I feel like we've heard the phrase when the Higurashi cry. Huh. So that implies that the Higurashi are way more involved in this whole curse business than originally. Like, I mean, they're just animals, right? But it's like, apparently they are like, I thought it was metaphorical, but why on the time when we are actually basically being influenced by the curse, it feels like, is that when we see the phrase, the Higurashi when they cry, you know? That's odd. There's nobody at school. I couldn't hear the playful voices of children. This was the first time I'd seen the school with such a lack of human presence. Still, I quieted my breath and looked around, not wanting to be unprepared. It had gotten dark outside, but it almost felt like my ears could see more clearly now. I made absolutely sure of my safety, then walked to the heavy construction machine I had hidden the metal bot behind. I had a tinge of worry, a premonition that somebody had found the bat and hidden it somewhere else as a prank. If that happened, would I take that as an opportunity to desist? If it really wasn't there, then. The sensation of chilled metal. It was still here when I left it. It hadn't run away. Satoshi hadn't run away. He'd waited here patiently for me.
待たせたな、サトシ。いよいよだが、覚悟はいいか?
Through the metallic touch, Satoshi grinned at me in my mind. That's when I should be asking, you know. I did this last year already. You should be more worried about yourself.
上等だぜ、サトシ。目に物を見せてやろうぜ。
Satoshi's back got lighter and lighter and fit into my hand like it was being absorbed. It didn't feel wrong to swing this. I could move it around so naturally, it was like an extension of my own right arm. Of course it felt like that. Satoshi and I were holding one bat together. Next, I would make the call to lure the man out. It wasn't a bad time for it. My friends were doubtlessly parading happily through the stalls. I hadn't considered where to make the call from. My house and Satoko's were far apart, but called from my house I wouldn't make it. Couldn't I use the school phone? But as I thought, the room was locked up and I couldn't get in. Shoot. I'm so naive. You should have at least figured this part out. I couldn't call him. And just for that, was today all over? I'm sorry, Satoshi. And just as I cursed my own naivety, a miracle occurred. A bicycle came into the schoolyard. It was a familiar middle-aged man. The one from the Forest Service field office. Why? Wasn't today Sunday? Was he here to pick up something he forgot? Anyway, the forest officer went around back and felt around in his pocket, then unlocked the door and entered. The best possible coincidence, and it had to be Satoshi who saved me. The metal bat, through just my contact with it, told me this was the chance I couldn't allow to slip by. The section for the forest office and the school were neatly separated. I felt the man head into the forest office storeroom, which was at far the back where students weren't allowed into it. The door didn't match the fitting so well, so it didn't close all the way, and the gap in the door opened slowly as if to lure me in. I took a deep breath and went in. I tiptoed along, silently and stealthily, and made it to the teacher's lounge. That was the only place with a phone. As I held my breath to the teacher's lounge, I heard the Forest Service officer walking back over. Then the back door cluttered shut, and it was locked. I glanced out the window at the schoolyard and watched as the man got on his bike like nothing had happened, and rode out to the school gate. The school once again emptied, becoming deathly silent. I waited for a bit to make sure the silence was real deal, then reached the telephone on the principal's desk. I fished Satoko's house phone number out of my pocket. Again, like, maybe the divine wind or whatever is going to guide him and make this all happen, because it feels like there's so many points of failure. What if he doesn't answer the phone? What if he takes a different route? What if he doesn't take his bike? So many things. Heck, what if he doesn't even listen to the phone call and considers it like a prank? Yep, the number in the class directory for Satoko had been one from their house now, where she lived with her uncle. I touched the dial with my fingers and then thought for the moment about what to say exactly when he picked up, despite how many times I'd gone over it in my head last night. Now that I had fingers on the dial like this, it started to seep out of my mind like a cracked bucket leaking water. Simple would be best. More important, to say it straight, not to sound suspicious. I counted off 3 heartbeats and spun the dial. The call sound. Would Satoko's uncle pick up? Now, of all times, the hope that he wouldn't pick up, the feeling of doom and the knowledge that I couldn't save Satoko if he didn't, whirled around in a vortex. It was the voice of a grumpy man, like he'd just woken up. He picked up. Say your name so you know you're Hyojo, you a-hole. It would be terrible if I got it wrong. I made up my mind. I had all the initiative on my side. Here we go.
こちらは下根市沖宮警察です。北条さんのお宅ですか?
It was a change. I was changing my voice, but did he really think I sounded like an adult? Would he believe I was the police?
はい、北条ですけど。
今、お宅のお嬢さんの北条聡子さんを。
え、聡子が？あいつ何かやらかしおりましたか?
He fell for it. I could tell by how tense he was that he didn't doubt my words.
詳しい事情はこちらにいらしてからご説明します。すぐにこちらへ来ていただくことはできますか?
今ですか? 風呂に入っちゃったからあんまし表に出たかないんですがね。
What? You don't want to come out because you already took a bath?
はい、今すぐです。
すぐ。 ったく。
詳しい話はこちらでいたします。では、お待ちしていますので、よろしくお願いします。
あ、ちょっと。俺、警察署がどこかわかんないんだけど。どこよ、場所。
You moron, what the hell? The Okinomiya police station? I don't know where that is either. Aren't you from around here? Why don't you know that? A greasy sweat came over my body. Eventually, just as I was about to choke, he spoke.
消防署の隣でしたっけ？遠いな。
Thank goodness he remembered on his own for me. Fetch me, see? How many fail points? So many! I didn't care where the police station was, so long as he left his house to get there.
では、お待ちしていますので。
俺、警察行ったら誰んとこ訪ねればいいんよ。あんた名前は？
On top of that, he wanted to know my name. Just leave your gosh darn house already.
前橋と申します。では、失礼します。
That was close. I almost thoughtlessly told him my real name. I managed to change the last syllable of it, but I put the receiver down like I was running away. My fingers were trembling. I was soaked with a tepid sweat. I wasn't just nervous about the phone call. With that call, everything had just finally been put into motion. I left the school. It was locked before, but it was easy enough to open from the inside. But I couldn't lock it again after I left. In terms of being thorough, I wanted to lock it, but I couldn't waste time going back to the teacher's lounge and looking for the key. I needed to rush back as fast as I could and ambush him. I zoomed back to the scene on my bike. If Satoko's uncle got out of town before I got there, everything would be over. He'd learned there was no one at the station named Maebashi. Things would get pretty messed up. As I returned at full speed, I passed a family wearing yukatas. They must have been on their way to the festival. Many people in Hinamizawa knew my face, so I didn't know theirs. Even just passing by them like this made me uneasy. But I didn't generally come around here, so those living in the area might not have known much about me. That didn't matter right now. I don't know, bro. You look like you're probably covered in dirt like you've just been digging recently. You have a bat, and you were seen by a school where a phone call was made to lure out somebody who then murdered. I'm pretty sure this is the combination that's going to absolutely land you in jail or like whatever. Oh my gosh. I needed to get back as fast as possible to control my breathing to ambush the man. I hid my bike in the thicket and picked up Satoshi's bat where I just left hidden in the shade. And then I held my breath waiting to see someone. I wondered if he still hadn't gotten here. Or maybe he went right out after the phone call and passed by here already. I couldn't figure out which it was, and was set upon by an indescribable impatience. Calm down, Keiichi Mirabara. Even if he came here already, he'd pass by on his way back, right? The end result would be the same. It wouldn't change the fact that he'd die. He'd probably be coming on his motorcycle. See, okay, motorcycle. What are you gonna do with it once he's here? Like so you commit the act, you actually do it, right? How on earth are you gonna get rid of that motorcycle? How would I stop him then? I figured it would be best not to think too hard and just hit him as he passed or beat him out of his seat. Wow. Oh, gosh. It's like I said, this plan. The path was made of pebbles. If I hit him hard as I could and made him lose his balance, he wouldn't be able to help falling. And then, the chorus of the Higurashi stopped. The sound of a bike approaching from far away. I couldn't tell what sort of motorcycle it was from the sound, but I'd seen it parked before, so I'd know. It was getting rapidly closer. It was almost here. If he just went a little further, he'd come into that thicket and appear in front of me. I'd take the moment to make sure it was him. Then when I had, I'd put my plan to action. The motorcycle appeared. A few easily identifiable characteristics told me it was Satoko's uncle's bike without a doubt. Was it really him? Was it really Satoko's uncle? Oh, what a twist if it was the wrong person. Oh no. I wasn't making a mistake, was I? I looked at his characteristics again. Its color, shape, and most of all, the man's clothes. And face! Those last feelings of hesitation, I did away with them. Satoko, now your Nini will end it, okay? Closer, the bike came closer. Let's go. Satoshi! Well, he actually talked. Whoosh. I jumped out of the thicket. I used my shoulder to basically tackle the uncle on the bike with all my might. Holy crap, he actually got him. He gave a dumb shout as his bike completely lost its balance. Finally it fell, the bike skittering clouds of sand after spinning and stopped. Her uncle, tossed to the ground, didn't understand what had just happened and groaned for a few moments, crouching on the ground. My breathing started to become ragged. No, I couldn't have this emotion. Some weird secretion crossed through my brain and nearly made me hallucinate. Her uncle was groaning. That was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. What was I doing? All the sounds of the world cut off. My mental chaos... And there's the chimes again! My mental chaos from a moment ago withdrew like a lie. All I could feel was the temperature in my head rapidly cooling down. The tension of all my muscles all went away like the strings had been attached to had been cut. I let my hands dangle at my sides. It wasn't quite like exhaustion. Have you calmed down now? Keiichi Maribara? Do you need to remember again why things got to this point today? Scrape. Scrape. I stepped over the pebbled path, taking one step, and another to Satoko's uncle. And that reminds me of Rena in the first chapter, her slow but inevitable pacing. The more I walked, the more my breathing calmed. The more I walked, the more I felt my body cooling, calming, chilling, the frost. Yes, at this moment the guy had lost his permission to live. I had just rescinded it, so he mustn't stay in the world any longer. If he lived any longer, Satoko's misfortune continued. It would be my responsibility for having allowed him to live. I could feel the cooling substance growing through my whole body, even down to my capillaries. Her uncle was at my feet now, still on the ground like an idiot. I smiled coldly at how ridiculous he looked. That's all it took for it to hurt? Satoko's head hurting much more. Now you're gonna feel that. And with your life, I'll make you up for her pain. I erased all unnecessary information from my mind. I prioritized the murder of this man. Execute. 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 Going frickin' Darlek on us. Wham. Utterly calm, I delivered my first strike to the back of his head. I wanted to get to the most effective spot. At least during that first moment, I'd have attacked him while he was at his most defenseless. He should have gone for the face, honestly. Because not only would he have hit him in a good spot, but he would be disorientating. And if he was hit in the head, he'd cover his head. It was a defense reaction all humans made like machines. He used both his hands to cover his head, so I couldn't pick him up off the pick himself up off the heap he was on the ground. Like pounding a caterpillar in the dirt, I hit him over and over. If he covered his head, I'd hit him in the side. If he covered his body, I'd go for his head. If he rolled over, I'd strike his feet, his knees, his elbows. I didn't care where anymore. By just delivering one blow after another, I induced pain to him. I retained my overwhelming advantage, and he hadn't done nearly enough to deliver a fatal wound. Her uncle skillfully pulled himself up off the ground and started to run like a fleeing rabbit. I wasn't a judgment he'd made after seeing my face and decided whether to fight me. Right now, he was fleeing by instinct, just trying to escape from the threat that presented itself. A counter-attack from the more physically capable uncle was what I was most concerned about. I am as well. He may have run, but it wasn't all that unlucky, and the odds were in my favor. The uncle didn't run away toward people, but off the path and into the woods. How pleasant that he would run in a direction where nobody else was. He was fleeing into strange geography like a rat that instinctively runs into tight spots over and over. Yes, he was no longer human. He was a rat. The blood vessels in my legs expanded and told oxygen supply increased. I lowered myself and gained the most explosive velocity I could. Without breathing, I became like a wind-like shadow and dashed. I crossed thickets, crushed dead tree branches underfoot, and drove through the woods like a bullet. He ran so cowardly, arms flailing as he went. After catching up to him, I didn't need so much a blink of an eye to strike him again. My senses, mind, and body were all sharpened purely to kill this man. This was the first time I'd felt like this. Well, this was the first experience I'd ever had killing somebody. It's the first. Chime chime. It felt natural continuing to do this for the first time. And that meant I had this much talent for killing. Or perhaps the act of killing was so simple anyone could do it. Sadly, I think it's that. I think it's like the only reason most people are bad at killing is because we have things like morals and our internal compasses. Like they even talk about what was it how even soldiers or policemen, when they draw their weapons and start firing, 90% of the time, they miss wildly. And it almost seems in defiance of their training. Like their training has to try and combat this, but a lot of it, like there's a lot of talk I remember hearing about in my psychology class where they thought like the studies they'd done on it boiled down to the fact that like even when feeling like they had no other choice, a lot of people just aren't willing to kill because it just seems so abhorrent to them. But if you take away if you program that out of people, it's a lot easier to kill people than you think. The fact that like such simple injuries can like kill people. Like heck, there's that story about the guy who like sucker punched somebody, like was randomly out of the blue, just punched somebody in the back of their head, put them in a coma for 9 years and killed them. One punch in the right spot can absolutely just destroy a person. You can just trip like on a flat surface, and if you fall just right, you can just die. It's incredibly easy for people to die. Like it's kind of scary. I didn't struggle or grow tired at all chasing the clumsy fleeing uncle. No matter how much he ran, it was like trying to get away from his own shadow. He couldn't get away from me. I could easily aim at his back, his shoulders, and his head even from this unnatural stance. Every time I struck him, he wailed in pain and begged pitifully for forgiveness, but it didn't disturb my mind. I was neither excited nor plagued by the hesitation like before. I felt sharp, felt like a carnivore. Of course, so did the uncle, who was trying to run away because he didn't want to die. He didn't want to be eaten, like a herbivore running with all its might trying to get away. Despite all the attacks, despite all the hits, he kept on fleeing without even staggering. And despite the bad footing in the forest, he impressively never tripped over anything. But there was no need to admire that fact. It was simply proof that he was no more than an animal. If he was chased, he would run. If he was going to be killed, he would run. He bared his fangs at the weak, but couldn't oppose the strong whatsoever. He was lowly, vulgar, a diminutive animal. And such a puny little creature had harmed Satoko. Scar after scar to her body and mind, deep wounds that might never go away as long as she lived. What's interesting is how quickly he was able to take down like Mion and Arena in the first chapter, but that also was probably fueled by like potentially the serum that makes you go crazy. My cold, calm emotions suddenly turned into a bestial ones. My personality changed into something specialized for murder, purely to devour the diminutive animal before me. The uncle gave a puny little shriek, covered his head, and ran. I'm impressed by how much you can run. Fine, run as much as you like. I will be your death. I will choose the moment at my leisure. Your legs will hurt, your lungs will feel about to burst, your head will hurt from lack of oxygen. If you feel the pain has become worse than death, then by all means stop any time. Without turning back, suffocated by his terror of the approaching death, he just ran shamefully onward. If he gets far enough, we could end up being like in public. He ran but was chased, and his head bashed with a metal bat, sweat and drool flying everywhere, blood clinging to him. From his mouth came the sound of coarse, irregular breathing, a high-pitched scream that verged on crying, and pleas for forgiveness from someone. I didn't know who. Each and every second was a second of atonement I granted him. Now run. Fall and moan and die. Where did you even crawl out of anyway? You were never here before. If you were never here, you'd never shown up. If you never showed up, our lives would still be fun and enjoyable. We would have gone to today's festival, waited for each other, gone to the Shine laughing. We would have been playing amongst the stalls right about now. We would be browsing the strange food stalls you only saw at festivals, trying to get the prize from goldfish scooping, ring throwing, or target practice. Mion would surely be making it a competition, and we as a club would have a grand time. And everyone we'd be cheering for Rika-chan's dedication dance, and everyone would say how fun it was, and would give us the energy for days to come. Fun, enjoyable, and funny, warm time spent with friends. And that would have happened, but it didn't, and now it was all smashed to pieces. There was no doubt that would be what the world was like if you never showed up. You were the obstacle, the mistake, the heresy in the world. But I would correct that mistake now. I would erase you and make it so the last week never happened. Tonight was the Watanagashi festival. The holy night, where just taking one's life was permitted in the name of Onishiro-sama's curse. Looks like the Higurashi stopped crying at some point. When the Higurashi cried, everything would end. And the Higurashi silenced. Lowly one, the hour of atonement is at an end. The Higurashi have stopped their cries, thus it is the end. The end. You don't have to run anymore. Die with those dirty brains of yours smashed everywhere. Gah! Lightning and thunder struck like an explosion. It was so loud it shook the ground and I smelled gunpowder. The response I got this time was clearly different from the one before. The metal bat crunched into the crown of his head. It was like the top of his head had caved in. The bat felt like it was biting him. Had it been the final killing act that had visited him? When I didn't overlook the opening, he left, his knees gave out under him. I remained alert for a few moments, then thud, thud. He planted both his knees to the ground and then fell forward, burying his head in the ground. Now, it sounds horrible, but you gotta double tap. Do not take the risk that he's just unconscious. I've been holding back my ragged breathing, but now it came out to me like a dam bursting. My head was dizzy, light, and unable to maintain my balance. I leaned against a nearby tree. The uncle didn't try to guard his head any longer. After a disgusting sort of spasm, he stopped moving. Did I get him? Did I get him for sure? I fought back my exhaustion and urge to fall over where I stood and drew towards him carefully, but still at the ready. It was possible he's faking it and trying to wait it out. Should I check for a pulse? I realized right away, though, how unnecessary that would be. I felt if I thought he might be faking it, then I'd just have to keep pummeling him until I was satisfied. I mean, he's right. Is it weird to say that's what I would do? That's weird to say. I fought back my ragged breathing again, and then I swung the bat far above and brought it down. Clunk. His body leaped like a bow. He didn't even try to cover his head. Then once again, I aimed for his head and swung. His reaction was the same this time. After spending a few moments making his head into mochi, the head gradually started to feel different. I started to spray the filthy dark red liquid everywhere. That was enough. It was definite now. I had absolutely killed him. There was no sense of accomplishment, nor one of regret. I didn't feel anger towards Satoko's uncle, nor pity towards Satoko herself. Instead, right now, I was feeling like my heart had been stolen by the downpour. It had begun to rain at some point, and how comfortable it felt. The rainwater drenched my body and dripped down to the ground. The excitement within me faded, and the rain washed away the grime. In exchange, my shoes were so wet they made splashing sounds. And despite abusing Satoshi's bat like that, it wasn't even bent very much. There were a few dents in it, probably from hitting the man, but nothing that would make it seem any different from before. Instead, it had been stained, with black, with red, with mud and blood. But that itself would be evidence. The one piece of evidence needed to prove that my delusions hadn't been daydreams, that I'd entered Satoko's uncle for eternity. Alright, Keiichi. Calm your mind. Time for passion is over. Now's the time to be cold as ice. I needed to bury the body. But where was I? I'd simply followed the man as he ran to the darkness. I couldn't take a guess as far as we'd run. It was already pitch black around us, and the only light it had to go on was the very faint lights of the road a little further down. It was so dark out. I hadn't noticed the darkness until just now. My vision was so good I could see the man's ugly hairline. I could have counted the pores in his head. It was only now I realized how much crazy strength I'd mustered at that moment. I went over to the streetlight. I looked up and down the road, desperately trying to find out where I was. Oh no. This is the one road connecting Hinamizawa to the town. We were unbelievably far away from Satoko's house. Had the two of us really run so far a distance? My surprise at that was accompanied by the knowledge that the miraculous fact that despite running so far and making so much noise, we hadn't come across anyone at all. There was a long way between here and the ambush location where I dug the hole. There was no way I could carry the body that far. Wait, aside from that, the bike the man took here was still lying in the middle of the path. That would be an issue. The police could tell whose motorcycle it was by looking at the license plate, and they wouldn't just leave it at that. Thankfully, the corpse was in a dark forest. In terms of urgency, dealing with the bike would come first. And I wanted to get that shovel back from where I'd left it next to the hole. It shouldn't drag the body there. I would have to deal with it right here. Fortunately, the ground is like mud from the downpour. It was more sludgy here than where I was before. I might be able to dig a grave quickly here. Of course, my bicycle is still over where I left it too. Still, it wasn't over. Homicide had only been half my goal. The other half would be just as important as the first. I would completely hide the body, not allowing the beginning to happen. I would erase the man like he'd never existed and regain the peaceful times we had before. But then you're going to come home late from the rain. People are going to wonder where you were. It's going to leave a huge gap. You won't have an alibi. It's a mess. I bent my head backwards and calmed my mind even further. The big water droplets struck my brow mercilessly. They were actually quite comfortable. For a while, I let my desire have its way. After confirming that I was sharp again, I started running through the rain. The motorcycle was in the grass at the roadside. Considering how it looked, pelted with rain and covered in mud, it actually seemed like it might have been lying there for a very long time. The plan was to drop the motorcycle into the swamp. The swamp was a bit of a walk from here. I lifted the bike up. I didn't think it would be so heavy. I was a little surprised. But once I had it upright, it was fairly easy to roll along. Okay. I know it might suck, but I actually think I will end here. I don't know how much longer we've got, but I think he's got a lot to do to try and, like, hide things, and... do I just go on anyway? You know what? Never mind. We're gonna keep going. Still pushing this thing all the way to the swamp was really something I wanted to do. Was not really something I wanted to do. I could no longer ignore my exhaustion. It warned me numerous times how far the swamp was. This motorcycle? I wonder if I could ride it well enough. Once I got it going, it would be basically the same as a bicycle. Wouldn't it get me to the swamp quickly? A plan suggested by my exhaustion and anxiety at getting on a motorcycle for the first time withdrew. I turned the key and then you just kick the pedal, right? Yeah. Yeah. It's on. And then I gripped the handlebars, first right and left. Maybe I twisted them too much. The bike lurched and did a wheelie like an angry horse. I lost it for a second, but it's just a problem of how much torque to apply. Let's try that again. This time slowly, gently. The time it went well. It was strange to be on a two-wheeler vehicle that wouldn't even go if I didn't pedal. Very odd, but I got used to it quickly. Mion once again told me you could get a scooter license within a day. She was clearly right. This is pretty easy. I needed to throw the metal bat into the swamp too. But I didn't know how I would pack the bat into the motorcycle. Without much other choice, I stuffed it in the back of my shirt, feeling like a ninja carrying a katana. If I put the tip down in the seat of my pants and hunched it over, it wouldn't fall out. I got back on the bike, and this time got going without any difficulty. Carefully pressed the button labeled light, and a rather strong light came on, illuminating the way forward. I probably really shouldn't have turned it on, but I didn't have any way of seeing at that point and had zero confidence I could ride through this darkness. As the rain came down on me, I maintained a precarious balance and inched toward the swamp. Along the way, I ran across a few people who seemed to be returning from the festival, but none of them had any interest in me. They were either soaking through with rain or hurrying on their way home, or had their umbrellas lowered and their heads turned down. Yesterday, I might have been wary of these passers-by, but right now, it didn't seem like much cause for concern. In fact, they'd probably be less suspicious to be riding out in the open like this instead of sneaking around. More and more, though, I started to think of that idea as naive and brought on by my exhausted state. Yeah, he's leaving so much evidence behind. It's bad. I climbed a steep hill. On the bike, the hill would have put me out of breath, but I just had to accelerate a little bit to climb the entire thing. Motorcycles sure are convenience. For a moment, the lights illuminated the sign before I passed it. Onikakushi Swamp. Good children do not play around here. Still, it wasn't like the way the swamp was cordoned off by a metal fence or anything. Parents and teachers would get mad at you if they found out you were playing at the swamp, but some bad kids in my class apparently snuck out here sometimes to see the giant crayfish in the place. They had talked about it before, how they'd gone to the candy shop to buy some pickled squid and then just tied it to the fishing line and thrown it in, and all the crayfish would come running. Once I got up the bank, there was a tiny ritual shrine and traditional ropes on one of the trees. And as I swallowed the downpour whole, the blackened swamp had waited for me. If I slammed on the acceleration from the cliff like the top I was on now, the thing would come flying straight into the middle of the swamp. I had to be careful not to fall in with it. If I drowned and disappeared, man, what a stupid ghost story that would be. On the night of Watanagashi, Satoko's uncle's corpse was found in a thicket by the road leading down to town, and Keiichi went missing. People would whisper that I had been demoned away. The 5th year's curse would be a half-baked one. I got off the bike and twisted the accelerator as hard as I could. I let go just when it seemed like it would drag me forward. The bike shot off the cliff and was swallowed down in the swamp, leaving a far fainter splash than I had imagined. Its surface was being pummeled by the downpour, and the muddy, filthy water was flowing into it. I couldn't even make out the motorbike I'd just thrown in there. It was pretty heavy, after all. It would be quickly engulfed by the soft mud at the bottom of the swamp, and it would be pulled deeper and deeper until it reached the hell itself. I felt no reluctance whatsoever in throwing the man's motorbike down the land of demons, but I did have a twinge of regret about Satoshi's bat. I washed the bat with muddy water. The gore sticking to it came off easily. I had sort of shared today's events with Satoshi, so I wanted to give it quite a quiet place to stay. That's how it felt. I started to feel more like returning to the locker from before, so I could continue to keep watch over Satoko.
サトシ、俺、多分、お前のこと、誤解してた。
Satoshi listened quietly without nodding. I am absolutely convinced now. You were the one who beat your aunt to death last year and saved Satoko. I always scorned you and called you a coward who ran away, but I was wrong. To the rest of the world, some deviant was behind that incident, but I know. That was something you did for her. And then you disappeared. You finally got back that peace, but lost it within days. So I swear to you that I will live the life to the fullest from now on, live it enough for both of us. I will live on as though this week, this day never happened. But I will never forget the short time we shared together for as long as I live. I didn't know what expression Satoshi made as he listened, but as someone who protected the same girl, I felt he had smiled and given me his blessing. And then, my hand moved of its own accord, and the bat I hesitated to throw away left my hands and flung through the air. It traveled its parabolic path, spinning all the while, and the swamp absorbed it without a sound. There wasn't even any ripples where it hit the surface. That surface was tempestuous because of the downpour, and the bat was long gone. For a moment I regretted having thrown it, but I realized that might have been what Satoshi had wanted.
そうだよな。俺は、まだ感傷に浸る余裕なんかないんだよな。
I would return for my shovel, get my bike, dig a hole and hide the body and bury it. It seemed like a simple sequence of events, but felt extremely exhausted and had to do it all tonight. Satoshi left me with only advice I needed to finish this up soon, then fell silent for eternity and disappeared at the bottom of the demon's abyss. I returned to the path I had ambushed her uncle on. My bike was hidden, sleeping in the bushes. I stood it back up. My whole body felt heavy, but I needed to finish this by the end of the day, even if I had to whip myself to do it. Oh, I forgot something. I didn't just come here for my bike. The shovel was here too. No good. I was zoning out. Even once in a while, I let my guard down, my vision would almost go black. Pull yourself together, Keiichi Maribara. It's still not over. I went to the grove of trees and looked for the hole in which I'd hidden the shovel. Unfortunately, I'd hidden it deep in the forest, not wanting to be seen, and now everything was black as night. I couldn't see anything anymore. I reawakened my fading consciousness and realized just how big this annoyance really was.
おい、マジかよ。
Uh-oh. The sweat, the rain washed away before came back up to my skin. Deep in the forest where the streetlights could never reach. The fact that it would be so pitch black had been completely uncalculated. With this much darkness, even if I had been able to kill him right away like I'd planned, I don't know if I could have buried him without a problem. What should I do? I simply couldn't find the shovel tonight. If I forced myself to go deep into the forest, I'd lose even my sense of direction and might actually get lost in there. That might have been the exaggeration, but it's fully possible I'd trip over a tree and sprain a muscle. Oh right, my house's storeroom. There's another shovel there, the same fold-up kind. Couldn't go back to the house to get the shovel. Give up on finding the shovel tonight? Not as though the name Maribara was written on the shovel. But it seemed like an unusual item for an important variety store made in another country, so I didn't want to leave that shovel here. But in this darkness, I couldn't do anything. I should give up and go back to the storage room. And there was an electric lantern in there. If I used that for light, I could look for it. But it was so extremely dark, could I light the way with just a lantern? The light of the lantern in this dark night? I couldn't discard the possibility of it drawing eyes. And I doubted I could find the shovel with the lantern's feeble light. Besides, I'd left the body there for a pretty long time already. My sense of fear, dulled through the excessive exhaustion, finally reared its ugly head. Anyway, for now the most important thing was to hide the body. A shovel being found wouldn't be a big deal, but a corpse? They found that, I'd share the same fate as Satoshi. First, I'd go back to the storeroom at home. I'd get the lantern. Now that it's gotten dark, I might still need to dig out a hole for the body, too. And I'd get the other shovel. Then I'd deal with the body first thing. Once that was done, I'd come back here, find the shovel, and bring it back. I had to. I had to do that much at least, but I was so tired. But complaining was getting me nowhere. If I started getting complacent now, everything will have been for naught. At some point, I'd sat down. I gritted my teeth and endured lifting my heavy hips. The night was young. Of all nights I'd experienced, none that had been this long. When would it all end? The night was very young. Oh my gosh. I don't think he's gonna get out of this. I don't think he's gonna get away with it. Alright, I think we will stop here. I don't think it's going to go very well, but he still has a lot he's going to try and do tonight, and I think we can leave that for the next time. So he did it. He actually pulled it off. Well, the actual execution. Now, we see if he can actually cover up his story, but there's so many problems. We have him being seen riding from the schoolyard, where they might be able to trace the phone call coming from. Right? We know he was likely, like, figure we're seen riding a motorcycle into the woods toward the swamp, and if they dig for it, like if they look for it properly, they might find it. Then the fact that he was never seen that whole night, even though he told his parents he was going to the festival, and the shovel that's being out there that could be tied directly to their home, and whose father would likely be able to recognize it as his shovel, even if, like that's the thing, is like, anyone finding a random shovel might not think anything of it. But during a murder investigation, they find the shovel, and they put the dots together. They could see that Keiichi might have been involved. All they have to do is take it to his house and just ask his dad, like, hey, do you recognize the shovel? His dad says yes. That places him at the scene of the crime. And even with the rain, like, it might make it harder to trace, but you got to think about the fact that, like, they probably left quite a trail through the mountains. Like I've done hunting before, and the thing is, like, when you shoot like a deer, you shoot it and it typically runs for a while. Even if you do lethal damage to it, its instincts kick into gear, it panics, and it just runs. And so a big part of hunting is also tracking where your shot went. Like, so you shoot, you hit the deer, and then you have to trace it. They can run for miles. You have to hike and find them. And then once you find them, you recover it and, like, finish your hunt. But, like, tracing through the forage, like, yeah, it'd be harder in torrential rain, but it's doable. You still leave trails like footprints and snapped twigs and probably blood. And, like, you'd be surprised how like, even just a little blood can be trackable. So I'm very, very skeptical that he's going to get away with this. So yeah, this is going to be interesting. But I'm curious to see how it's going to pan out. And I do wonder if he's going to get vanished. Like, if we're going to see how a vanishing occurs, because Keiichi will be vanished. So that's kind of what my prediction is going to be. But we'll have to get to it when we get to it. Anyway, that's enough for now. Thank you so much for being here today. Thank you so much for joining me. Hopefully you're okay with stopping here. I feel like it's a pretty good spot to end, and we're going to see kind of how this all plays out. I don't think it'll play out well, but we'll still see how it plays out. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me today. Hope you had a great time. I certainly did. And until the next video you're watching me, I have to see me in next. I'll see you there.